Hey Daniel, this is Rob again, looking at your next scheme, which is your behavior scheme, and see if I can give you some feedback on this one. I have a feeling I already know which one I like better. It's probably not this one. Oddly enough, you don't see many symmetrical buildings anymore these days. Not quite sure why. It's not really my objection to this one necessarily. So let's go in and take a look at the site plan. And I know you've been busy at work and all. It's nice to show a little bit more context in your site plan. So you see the buildings across the street, you see the buildings over here. It gives reviewers who are less familiar with the site a little bit of a better axes or a better. Sorry, this is my last one for tonight, so I'm pretty tired. Um, Now the building is pushed pretty tight up against here, so it's going to be very congested here. You may want to just push the whole thing down a bit, um, and then that might allow you to get a little bit more graciousness here at the entrance. I like the idea of the community entrance for the gym, which could be good. I suppose this is something that Lois was talking about as a way to save space, although knowing this road, it makes me a little worried to think about backing up into this traffic and then going forward. Um, you actually have enough space to actually pull in and have the parking. Well, you could probably do it. It'll be tight, but you could probably make an actual row of parking spaces here and make it fit. Rain gardens are great. They tend to be not connected to the building, although they can be. Most physical plant people that I work with won't allow them to connect. And the site slopes this way. That was something I meant to talk to you about in your other scheme. There is a bit of a slope this way and this way, so the building will be higher at this end. And I'm wondering if this rain garden could somehow connect to this rain garden and then connect down into here maybe. The series of, but I don't know about this situation here. That could happen underneath, so you don't see it, or you can make it visible or not. And the thing with the trees is, I know that there's a buffer zone in here. You probably want to go ahead and really tree that up and give it a sense of a real solid buffer zone. And typically you might have to even put a wall across here just for security purposes. And the wall might be invisible because of the trees, but it's just give that solid edge there so there's a sense of safety. But just like your other scheme, you have a nice sense of outdoor space here that could be, I would avoid the kind of random placing of trees and try to schedule a meeting with Lois to get some feedback on how you might approach the trees. I tend to rather would sort of thicken this up and have little habitats in here. Make this a really kind of interesting edge. I would almost make this a forest edge and leave this more as an open playing field. Or you can begin to use the rain gardens maybe more like this to create subspaces for smaller kids here. I have to look and see what side your kindergarten is. By the way, thank you for your north arrow. I'd still like to see that sort of gateway thing that you had proposed here. I think that could still work in either scheme. Same problem here. I wonder if that's really feasible. This has to be a little bit more like a little softer there and a little softer there with the radius. Okay. So let's see what you got. Okay, so try to show a little site with the building. The lobby seems really small, and I do like the library where it is. I would say bring the library out even further. This is my first idea. Bring this back here. So now what you have is, all of that. If I can get a different shade here. Let's see, highlighter. So now you've got this as lobby, right? And you've got that as lobby, which connects into that, which connects into that. So I think that's a little more gracious and could be a little bit more useful on that end. And the library can come out. This is really what we call a classical scheme, with the symmetry in the library in the center is the most important space. Some of the problems that I see with this from a performance or behavioral standpoint, which is why I was a little surprised that you had that listed as your driver, but maybe it's just an evolution of that scheme. These rooms, this room especially, is relying almost solely on West light, which is a big no-no in sustainable design. In this room you would just have only glass here. This room is in great shape. Probably, needs shading and all of that. I did notice you're getting everything on the first floor, so you're relying a little bit on a shared space here, and you're also relying on no science room. And so I wonder if the building actually is a little bit bigger than you show it. Same thing here. I mean, East light is less of a concern in my mind, but still a concern. And these look like very long, thin classrooms. So, those tend to want to be kindergarten, first grade, which are broken up into multiple spaces. Remember, all doors open out. And you got your gym. Seems to work very well, in your cafeteria. And we have to talk about whether there's going to be a kitchen involved in this situation. I just spoke with Julie, who's the principal, has been principal at many schools. She likes the idea of having a cafeteria for the kids to go and socialize across grades and all that kind of good stuff. Admin kind of works, although they don't get any direct daylight. This could be all glass, and there could be a big old reception desk here, which I think is pretty critical to get the views in there. You can also begin to poke this out also, right, and get a vestibule in here. So you get double door, and that's not bad. Kind of like some of the organicness that's happening here is kind of interesting. So you have some interesting things. You've got another set of bathrooms here, which I suppose is fine. And I'm assuming there's a basement under here for mechanical. You can always put the music room in the basement. Some people would be upset by that, but not me personally. Remember that the way the site slopes, you have more space under this part of the building. So maybe you just do a basement under this part of the building. Remember, when you do a basement, you have to have ways to get in and out on two sides. So that gets tricky. You can usually do some of these kind of cutout stairs that go down into the ground, which is kind of fun. So I don't know what the magic is of these angles. I suppose that's an experiential, trying to create a sense of architecture. I think I would do the same. I would really start to make this much more organic. Hopefully you can find reasons to do that, so that this doesn't seem just such like an anomaly, because then these are really strange spaces. Because you have sort of a trapezoid. Typically you would want that to be maybe stepping, maybe these step like this, which could be kind of good. This rooms can be a little disorienting for the students, so you might want to think of a stepping deal. Interesting scheme. There is no second floor, as I see. Like the library, it looks like it's going to have a library has a little bit of a second floor on it, which is nice. Looks like it has probably a little mezzanine, which I think is kind of pretty smart. Remember, you'll have to give shading across all of this glass here, but I think the idea of the glass is good. Libraries have books, so you don't want the books to burn. Not sure why this is a sloping deal here. You're going to get your PV all over this building, and that's something else to consider, so maybe that slope helps. And you don't have a slope over here, so it's kind of asymmetrical in form, symmetrical in plan, which is probably pretty good. And if I look here, it looks like you probably have enough room to get an actual parking lane in there, which would allow you to park your cars probably along here. That will get that sidewalk back to the street and help out with that. And I might think about playing with the geometry a little bit more. Maybe this is sort of a trapezoid, which for a library maybe you can deal with, and maybe there's some sort of form work that could be kind of interesting for the project. And I still think you could bring back this element that you had out here before, but maybe it's something more organically shaped, like some of these elements and maybe some of these elements, so that the project gets a little bit of life to it from an experiential standpoint. I certainly would differentiate these ceiling heights again. I'd probably make this low and this a little bit higher. Um, so that might be pretty good. And I try to experiment with some of these interesting geometries wherever possible. After I just told you to make this straight, sorry about that. You can have a room. You really shouldn't have a room that does that. You can have a room that does that. I think that's okay as long as three sides are perpendicular to each other. People don't go crazy. But I see a lot of interesting roofs, and you can have more overhangs on these roofs, so that they make more of a statement. Same thing here, more overhang. Surprised you're not doing some clear stories along the side here to get light on all sides all through the building. I think that'd be pretty good. And then your science room, so you still have a science room to get in there. You still have, I think, a music room. um, so I don't really know how that goes. If I go back to the site again, you have so much space on the site. You could begin to look at having a science room here. Science room could be there, I'm not sure. Maybe this is the science room, so on the roof is the platform for viewing, but underneath is this really cool round room that the students can then view the site pretty freely, so that'd be pretty cool. So sorry I'm getting a little tired. I hope this is helpful. Remember, don't make any of these changes. These are for you for learning. You're going to compare these two schemes in the next 2 weeks.